Hello, everyone. This is Brother Jonas, and I am excited to continue this study in the book of Genesis, chapter 1. If you haven't listened to my study on Genesis 1 through 3, go in and give it a listen, and I hope you enjoy it. Y'all forgive me, it's rather chilly back here in my study, and I can't run the heater because that's all you hear is that heater humming when I do that. So I'm kind of bundled up here, and I will be taking periodic sips of coffee. So excuse me, please. All right, Genesis chapter 1, and we are going to move on. We'll go ahead and start back at verse 1 again and read through to verse 3. We established in our first lesson that at the beginning there was just God. Nothing else but God. He was completely self-sufficient, self-sustaining. He never had a beginning. He'll never have an end, of course. And that he created just by the counsel of his own will and for his good pleasure, and not that he needed to. And we established that he didn't need to take the time and the care in creation that he did because, after all, he's God. And if he had just spoke a word or had a thought, and all the universe would have come into existence and been completely filled in that instant, he most certainly could have done that, and it would have been perfect, without flaw, just as it was at the beginning. But instead, he took great care, starting with his spirit moving or brooding over the unformed creation, just like a bird broods over its nest. And then he began his methodical process of creating, of rearranging and designing and creating this universe. We did touch briefly on the gap theory. We like to call it a gap between Genesis 1 and 2. And I don't want to go much more into that. Last thing I'm going to say on that is, and I went through a bunch of scriptures who talk about the creation. And I think it's very obvious that as far as the writers of the Bible were concerned, this is when everything began. Right here. These first 7 days, or 6 days of creation, and resting on the seventh. This first week is when everything began as far as they were concerned, and I think that's how it should be with us. As far as we are concerned, this is where everything begins as well. All right, let's move on. Let's begin reading again. Verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So God here creates the first day. Not only creates on the first day, he creates the first day, evening and morning. As it says in Psalm 74:16, the day is thine, the night also is thine. Thou hast prepared the light and the sun. So it's a good thing. The day and the night are both the good things. They both have their uses. Now, before we continue on, excuse me for a second. Before we continue on, let's get into this. Were these literal 24-hour days? That's quite the hot topic, actually. I think that if you're just reading this passage with no other influence, you have no other opinion about how the world came into existence, you have no clue, and you sit here and you read this passage, I don't think you can come up with any other conclusion but that these are literal days. That seems fairly obvious. He divides the light from the day, evening and morning. Now, the Hebrew word there for day, a lot of people say, well, that can mean a time period. Like it says, as you go on, and it says, when was the generations of Adam in the day that God created the heavens and the earth, and so in that case, it's the same word, and it means day. There means the time period back in the day when He created everything. Also, kind of like with us, day means what? Well, we all know what day means. It means morning time. It means nighttime. This 24-hour period is a day. But we can also say, like older folks say, and I've started saying that myself to my kids. Back in my day, of course, we know that doesn't mean a specific day. That means back when you, quote unquote, ruled the world, when you were young and you ruled the world. Back in my day. So it can mean the same, but see, the same thing with this. The Hebrew can mean a literal day, and it can mean a time period. So people take that to mean, well, this isn't a literal day. These are maybe eons. After all, didn't Peter say that 1,000 years is as a day, and today is 1,000 years? Well, one thing about that passage in 2 Peter, what people don't know is Peter is most likely thinking of Psalm 90. Let's read Psalm 90 here, for it says. Psalm 90 verse 1 says, Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting thou art God. Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday, when it is past, and as a watch in the night. What's this passage saying? Saying no matter what, no matter how long people do evil things, God remembers it. 1,000 years are past. In other words, when on this very day that we're living in now, this moment, God knows exactly what's going to happen from now to 1,000 years in the future. And then when 1,000 years has passed, He remembers what happened at this very moment, right now, as if it were just yesterday. Because God is eternal, time has no meaning to Him. So I think that should reinforce that this is personally, that God is taking this time. Again, as I've said, God did not have to be methodical in His creation, but He was. And He was setting up the rules of how things were going to function right here and right now. I don't think you can use those passages to say that these days actually mean eons or whatever. But say, I don't know, because God's outside of time. So how can you say what it was eons between the one day and the next day? Not as far as time was concerned. Not as far as time. In God's eyes, it doesn't matter, because He doesn't exist in our time. He's above it. But as far as we are concerned, I believe it's very clear. Evening, morning, separated light from dark, made the first day, and then the second day, and the third day. As far as the law giving was concerned, when It gave the law of observing the Sabbath, it says God created it on 6 days, and on the seventh day He rested. Now you can say, well, symbolically He did, but I think He was setting it up. Everything, all time starts with evening and morning, and then you have another morning, and then you make a week, and then you make a month, and then a year, and so on and so forth. God starting at the very beginning, He's making the first days, the first week, and then so on and so forth. So I believe that's it. There are some other arguments using nature to disqualify this being literal days. One of the most erroneous arguments I have heard, and coming from Christians, people who I actually have listened to some of their messages, and I've quite liked them. But they believe this can't be literal days. because of starlight. You know that stars are trillions of miles away, and yet we see light from galaxies and stuff that are trillions of miles away. So traveling at light speed, that light wouldn't be here yet if these were literal days, and if the Earth was only a few thousand years old, that light wouldn't make it here yet. Folks, as we'll read later on, as we go on, it talks about him when he creates the sun and the moon and the stars. He created them for signs and for seasons. He created us to set our watches, both proverbially and literally, by. God created the sun, the moon, stars, and all the galaxies to be seen by us. I don't think he has a problem making it where we can see them. Light existed before. There was already light. Night and day already existed before the sun in God's creation order. I don't think it's going to be a problem. He wants us to see them. He can make it where we can see them, okay, before. God is above all these things. As I've said, the Bible's not a science book. However, I don't think science contradicts the Bible by any means, but you're not going to be able to explain the creation scientifically. It was a miracle, ladies and gentlemen. A miracle by a divine God. God is the only one. We all know you can add 0 and 0, and as many times over as you want. 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, you're always going to come out 0. Only God can take 0 plus 0 and make everything. And that's what he did. So I don't think he has a problem with making the light, though so far away, be seen by us. Let's continue, and we can hit more on that. That argument about the starlight thing, and one of the same brothers who was, and I call him a brother because I've heard his testimony of salvation. He sure seems to be one of the same brothers who was using that argument, saying the starlight. It's like he likes making excuses for miracles to, I guess, make them more palatable to people. For instance, he used an example. He's up on stage and he says, look at this. I pick up this water bottle. You know the law of gravity. Gravity is keeping this water bottle here on this pulpit. I pick it up. Nope, look at there. I'm defying the law of gravity. It's a miracle. See, all a miracle is God is just, he's very powerful, and all he does is he can defy certain laws a little better than we can, more powerfully than we can. I don't understand what he's trying to say here. Gravity is still in effect just because you're grabbing that bottle and picking it up. No, God changes the rules at times. For one thing, in this first week, he was creating the rules. And then at different times in the Bible, he changed them. He interfered with them because he's God. So anyway, let's just keep that in mind. It's rather confusing, and it's hard to even answer that. All right, it says in Call night, the first day. All right, verse 6. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Okay, so on the second day, he creates the firmament, like the heavens. He creates the first heaven, which is what you see, the sky where the birds fly, and then the second heaven, which was the outer space. And it is possible at this time, we don't know, he may have already created the third heaven, which is the heaven above all heavens, the third heaven, where the angels and such are, and such. And that's another as well. Let's get into that. When did the angels come in this? Well, the Bible does not mention anywhere. Does not mention when angels were created. Nowhere. I believe it was in this in this creation week. I don't know when it was exactly. Again, God is concerned with, he's showing the earth being made. He's showing what mankind can see and interact with. Man's nature, man's reality. So I don't know when he created. The book of Job, in Job 38, it talks about, let's go ahead and read that. It's a very interesting passage. Job 38, verse 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins. I like this part. Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee an answer, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare, if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measure thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So here, that's verse 7 seems to indicate that the sons of God there, perhaps meaning the angels, because in Job it talks about the angels being sons of God, or at least that's perceived to be what that is. Shouting for joy as he's creating. So we know the angels were there while he was creating, but that doesn't necessarily mean they were created before this 7-day period. We don't know when they were created, but I believe they were created sometime in it as well. But who knows? Maybe they were created before it officially began. Who knows? I don't know. But anyway, we know that they were there during creation, watching and singing and rejoicing, it seems, while he was creating. But I like that passage too, if we talk more about it. I like how, again, going back to the argument, people want to argue about nature and such. God says, where were you? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the world? Also talks about how he stretched the line upon it. Many passages talk about him stretching it out. Isaiah talks about stretching it out with his hand, the spanning it out with his hand. As we see here, they divided the waters from the waters and created all what it seems to indicate is almost like he started from this ball of nothing kind of and everything. Then he took his hand and he stretched it out. I heard someone tell that Martin Luther's commentary on this, he used an example of it's basically like inflating a pig's bladder. What does that mean, inflating a pig's bladder? Well, apparently, back in the day of Martin Luther, if you didn't have a ball or anything to play with, you could inflate a pig's bladder and play with it. That's interesting, isn't it? But so that's how he kind of, so God basically took it and stretched it out and expanded it. Of course, even science says that the universe seems to be expanding still. Make of that what you will. But anyway, so that's what it means. He's creating the layers of everything. It was absolutely just nothing at first, kind of flat, and then he swells it out and stretches it out. And that's the firmament. The firmament, of course, meaning derived from the word firmly set in their place. And that's true. The sun, moon, and stars, of course, is before he actually put them up there. But they are firmly set in their place up in the heavens. All right. I think we will go ahead and stop right there. I hope you enjoyed that very much. I sure enjoyed teaching it. I love to keep going, but I want to keep these as trim as possible so that you'll have time to listen to them with our busy lives here. Anyway, let's just remember what we learned in this lesson today, I believe, is that I do believe that these were 24-hour literal days, that God is setting time up how we perceive it now. He separated the night from the day. He made the first 24-hour day, and then he continues on to create during the first week and resting on the seventh day. And remember, God is the God. That's a common thing I'm going to be hitting on. Folks, we don't have to try to be compatible with the world. This is a miracle taking place here. God is making the rules right now. He's not constrained by them. Anyway, thank y'all very much for your attention. And y'all have a blessed week. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.